Hello. Welcome to Bookstore number 1. I'm so pleased to see so many of you, and I think this is turned up pretty high, so I'm going to back off the microphone for a little bit. I'm so glad so many of you came out, even though we have a rainy, dark day. What a better kind of day than to do poetry, to be here with us. So I'm happy you're here. Before we get started, I always like, and my name is Georgia Court, by the way. I'm the proprietor at Bookstore number 1, and I'm always glad to see new faces. There are a few new faces today for me, so this is always a good thing. Before we get to introducing our poets, I'd like to let you know what else is happening about poetry. And because there's so much going on, I printed off a list of the poetry events that are going to be happening here over the next month, because there are more than usual. And I want to point out 2 things to you, actually 3, I guess, that to me are important. Number 1, if you look at Monday, February 12th, it's Rose Styron who will be here. She is a poet, and she writes other things as well, and she will be talking about her new memoirs, her life as a poet. And if you go on to this event site, you may not see it posted yet in order to RSVP for that, because we just learned that she was in town and that she would agree to come and do a reading. We just learned that like Friday. So within the next couple of days, you'll actually see it posted, so you can, get a ticket. That's free, but get a ticket for it.
Martha's Vineyard.
Yes, she's from Martha's Vineyard. I visited her that day when I went to visit you, Don. So, exactly. Also, February 14th, Valentine's Day, we're doing something very special, and I hope you'll sign up for it. It's decadent poetry and decadent dessert. And it's at 8 o'clock in the evening, and we have 2 actors from Florida Studio Theater, Will Luera and Rachel Moulton, who will be reading Neruda love poems in Spanish and in English. We will have desserts and wines, and I believe that the fabulous concert guitarist Adol Munoz will be with us playing Spanish guitar that night. That's not a certainty yet, but we think he's going to be here. So it should be an interesting evening. It starts at 8 o'clock in the evening, so it's a late night, date night sort of thing. And the other thing is that at the end of that week, on February 17th, we're going to be doing a favorite poem reading. Many of you, some of you at least, in this room have participated in our favorite poem readings. How many? Put your hands up if you have. I see Lois, but I thought a couple others. Well, great then. You can all participate. This is where you read a poem that you love. Not your own poem, not your wife's poem, not your husband's poem, but a poem from the canon that you love that has real meaning for you. And you are given a minute to talk about why you selected that poem, and then you read the poem. It's that simple. It is a great experience. It's a lot of fun. And we're going to be doing that on Saturday, starting at 1 o'clock, February 17th. So, I have our website address down there. Go there and you will see the instructions, and there are some instructions here too, on how to apply to do that. We're not going to turn anybody away, because the usual favorite poem reading is Robert Pinsky set up, and he's been here to do it with us a couple of times, by the way. The original favorite poem reading that he set up takes 1 hour. But we're going to start at 1, and we're going to have as many people read their favorite poem as they would like. But what I ask is that you let me know by February 3rd that you want to read and what you're going to read. And the only reason I need to know that is to be sure that you're not going to read the Odyssey or something. You're going to read like a 1-page poem. And that there was another thing I was gonna say.
Duplication.
Oh, thank you, Lois, she's been through this, so she knows. And so that two of you aren't reading the same poem. And if that happens, what I'll do, let's say it's a duplicate, second person who submits that poem, I'll just get back to you and say, wait a minute, find another poem I want you to read, but somebody else has claimed that poem. So that's why I need to know by February 3rd. Okay. We have two readers today. I'm going to introduce the second reader first, and that's Joan Magiet. She has had combined careers as a multi-award-winning journalist, poet, and assistant professor of English at National Community College on Long Island. She has read her work on radio and television, is a founding member of Performance Poets Association, and has served on the editorial board and as a contest judge. She summers in New York and winters here in Sarasota. So she's with us today. She'll be reading second. Our first reader, hopes, which is Linda Robiner, hopes her collection called Chrysalis helps readers see more deeply into their own lives and into the lives of those they love. Her chapbook, Reverse Fairy Tale, traces the end of a marriage. Her poems and short stories have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. She has facilitated poetry, memoir, and fiction workshops and coached individual writers for 20 years. Before poetry became a major pursuit, she ran a cutting-edge master's level program in aesthetics at Cleveland State University, taught educational psychology and humanities in colleges in northeastern Ohio, and designed and produced a handful of public television series. So let's welcome Linda Robiner to the mic.
Hi, everybody. I have not a very loud voice, so if you cannot hear me, just raise your hand and I'll try to scream a little. I wish I could get out more voice, but I can't. I'm so happy to be here today with you. It's great to see everybody, and my thanks to Bookstore1 and Georgia, especially for the opportunity. I'm going to be reading some new poems as well as some poems that are in my two books. And please hold your applause until the end. I don't need to be applauded and re-applauded. Actually, Georgia encouraged me to read this first poem that I'm going to read, called Antique Book Collection. I collect old books about manners from the 1800s, and one is called Young Man's Counselor, The Duties and Dangers of Young Men. And it's printed in about 2-point font. So I don't know how many of men had read that book back in the 1800s. Another is What a Young Girl Ought to Know by the World Superintendent of the Purity Department of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. How would you have liked to have that job? And here's one of the sections, one of the books is Pearls for Young Ladies, and this is from 150 years ago. Women's work to please people, to feed them in dainty ways, to clothe them, to keep them orderly. Every day, do a little bit of housemaid's work in your own home so as to be a pattern of perfection. Your actual housemaid will follow your lead. If not, ask your mother to get another. As a child, I knew that girls could grow up, and this was a long time ago that I was a child, that girls could grow up to be mothers or teachers or nurses. And I did read a biography of Marie Curie, so I knew I could also be a physicist. But I really wanted to be a writer. Did some of you want to be writers when you were young? I bet some of you did. I feel like writing links me to myself, and I hope the connection goes further, that what I read today will make you think of your own life. That my words are sort of a reflection of yours, or for the men, maybe someone else you know. I want my narrative poems to bring you close to yourselves. Has anyone ever been to the Dodge Poetry Festival? Well, that is a wonderful place to go, and I went some years ago, and I just want to tell you about the feelings I had when I was there. Dodge Poetry Festival. Here in Waterloo Village, in moist air, sweet tartness of hot mulled cider, taste of language, the pulse of longing comes alive. Before poetry, no words for my hunger, no way to sink into water, as my great aunt long ago strode into the lake. I stood outside tents watching, struggled to comprehend my yearning, studied explorers, sketched maps of distant countries, fumbled through equations, looked for God. I didn't know whether I was a Sufi, a Buddhist, a pantheist, or a witch. Now I'm drunk with the spirit of thousands of strangers held by the mist. The sun emerges, but I needed the darkness, the rain, the moody air. I want to say that I reserve the right to edit my poetry, so even if it's published, I feel like I can change it the rest of my life. It's mine. Tell me how this sound is. Is it too loud, too soft? It's good. Weeding. The four of us squat in the front yard, damp grass, pressing bare thighs, weeding the lawn on an August evening. My mother and father, my brother and I, each digging with our own screwdriver. Every so often, one of us scratching mosquito-bitten arms and ankles. We toss our dandelions into one pail, white roots trailing into slimmer tendrils. We scoot our bottoms across the grass toward new turf, new possibilities. On such an ordinary summer evening, I cannot imagine I will be the only one to remember the harmony of voices, the warmth of the grass. I have to say that a big surprise to me was a cousin of mine I haven't seen in many, many years turned up at this poetry reading. My cousin Beth, who knew my mother and father and my brother, and it's so touching to me to have her here. You're all likely to be familiar with these William Carlos Williams lines. It is difficult to get the news from poems, yet men die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. So here at the bookstore, we celebrate poetry as well as other kinds of books. I inherited a mirror from a very glamorous aunt, my Aunt Betty. She's not the one who was in the Dodge poetry poem, but anyway, she was so glamorous, and I was so excited when I saw her. She lived in California, so I didn't see her very often. But this is a poem about Aunt Betty. What the stars foretell. I see Aunt Betty gaze into her mirror, the one with gold filigree on the handle and lilies. Turn of the century, elegant as she was. Once she'd been an actress, and I see her rouging her cheekbones, her Clairvaux lips. She took in stray dogs, 20 or 30 at once. Became a Rosicrucianist, separated from Uncle Eddie. Imagine a divorced astrologist back in 1930, a career, no children, and a made-up name, Rita Del Mar. In her photo for her column, What the Stars Foretell, she looks up under dark lashes, hole around her eyes, cleft in her chin, her ebony hair parted in the middle, pulled back, glitters. One glamorous moment when I was 9, I watched Aunt Betty's second wedding in our backyard. She wore a long dress, the blue satin of her eyes. Many years ago, my mother shook her head, told me I'm like her sister, always chasing rainbows, she said. You're just like Aunt Betty. I glance in her mirror and wish it were so. Did any of you have 5-year diaries when you were children? Mine had a lock on it, but I hid it anyway, and there was nothing revealing in it. It was so boring, but I hid it because I thought my mother might find it. But the more I've read poets, newer poets like Sharon Olds, the less I was afraid to spill. So here's one from my chapbook, Reverse Fairy Tale, about the end of my long marriage. I know some of you know this already, but some of you don't. I met the publisher years after the poetry book was published, and she said, I don't usually publish books about divorce, but yours was not bitchy. And that was because I had taken out about 60 of the 100 pounds. So I'm going to read a poem I have never read in public before, but it is in that book. And it's called In the Halls of Domestic Relations. Taste stale nicotine in the air. Study tattoos. Watch women slumped on benches. Sullen men staring straight ahead. A man in a muscled t-shirt and shorts awaits his turn with the judge. A young woman, lipstick smeared, confides, if it wasn't illegal, I'd hang him by his thing. In the courtroom, you open all your drawers. A judge fingers every slip and lock of hair. In his hands, your past and what is yet to come. I went to a series of classes before my first baby was born. But as I pulled into the parking lot, President Kennedy was on the radio, and he was talking about a terrible thing that was about to happen, and it was the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So here's another poem that I've never read at a reading before, but I think it's time. This is in my book, but I've never felt moved to read it. Round. She drives to a prenatal class, listening to news. John Kennedy proclaims a blockade of Cuba, a crisis in bloom. She imagines hunks of earth flying, cries out, imagines the baby in her belly, a fossil, contemplates the courage a woman needs to carry a child when the world is a frightening room. She hears pregnant women echo ancestors, their wails cascading down the sides of mountains, flowing into rivers, their chorus swelling into a round that never stops. She hears the weeping of women and women and women all over the world, all over the earth, all over this burning room. And on a more healing note, I've written this poem called Metta recently. And it's about a type of meditation known as metta, which means loving kindness. I heard an interview with Sylvia Boorstein, I know some of you know her name, a well-known Buddhist meditation teacher and writer. And she said she addresses herself as sweetheart. She talks about herself as sweetheart. So I like that, and that gave me the guts to address myself as sweetheart in this coming poem. It's called Metta for Myself. Sweetheart, take a deep breath. Your lips no longer look girlish. Your body's not svelte anymore. Everything you do takes longer. Your handwriting's less legible. You misplace stuff, even syllables. You'll retrieve them eventually. Like Sylvia in her Buddhist practice, offer loving kindness or metta to yourself and to those you care about. Don't miss the light of the world. Sweetheart, take a breath. Some of you have heard me read this one before. My partner says this is a signature poem. It's about a dress that, if you saw it today, you wouldn't even notice it, but it was really unusual at the time. And this is a little story about it. As you can see, most of my poems are narrative poems, and so here's a little story about the dress with one sleeve. I want to put it on again. The gauzy, blousy dress, one loose sleeve gathered at the wrist, the other naked. The dress whose long skirt draped easily over hips, whose blue looked like sky through sheer undulating curtains when you're making love late in the afternoon. Wearing it, I felt like a beatnik, a hippie, a flower child. I'd miss those lifetimes. I chose castles on beaches with little children, and 3 of us kneeling backwards on the couch, watching lightning in the valley. Now I want to replay that final scene, the evening I came down in the dress. Silver high-heeled sandals slipped over bare feet, so the décolletage of my toes showed. My husband clenched his teeth, crossed his arms over his chest, and said, "If you wear that dress, I'm not going to the party." The tone of his voice was the way people talk to children sometimes, though they know who the children are, what they need, as though longing and hunger signify nothing. I went upstairs and changed my clothes. But now, I want to put on this dress with one sleeve and be the woman I am today and say what I need to say. I did wear that dress later, and I saved it for a really long time, and I'm not even into clothes very much, but it was so symbolic to me. And when I read this poem years ago, I used to wear something bigger, and I would take it off and reveal this dress with one sleeve. But I think I'm too old to strip in public anymore. I'll be available to chat and sign several books that I have here. I only have a few left. And I'm going to read 2 more poems now. Notes to myself. Ignore dust mites in the bedclothes and frying pans heaped in the sink. Throw out every lonesome sock you've saved, hoping to uncover partners. No more bone bras that scrape your ribs. Overlook mountains of files muddling your office. Get rid of locks on doors and hopes you cling to. Lose the calendar so the hygienist won't pluck that bite wing thing under your tongue, and the gynecologist won't say that line they memorized the first day of training. You know, scoot down a little. Give up wanting to be beautiful next time. There may be no next time. Memorize the woods. Watch long enough to see fern fronds unfurl. Encourage the night to have its way with you. Darkness, too, longs to be held. And the last poem is called Front Door, and it's in 2 parts. And a little note about what's happening at the bookstore. Another note, on Saturday, February 3rd, there's going to be a launch of the new book that the bookstore has put together called Magazine 1. What is the name of the man who?
Ben Kearns.
Ben Kearns has put this book together, and I have a poem in the inaugural issue. So this is the poem. And it's in 2 parts, and it's short. 1, I hear the chime of the bell as I'm ready to shower. Assume an Amazon delivery, walk to the door, legs bare up to my long turquoise t-shirt. The woman and man look like young people at a 40s movie. I don't even notice Bibles, but I hope I won't scandalize the Latter-day Saints, Mormons who've come to my door to sell their God. 2, my man and I, each in t-shirts and long pants, ring a new neighbor's doorbell in mid-afternoon. No one comes. We try again the next day. Seeing us in their camera app, they tell us they pondered calling the police. The police? Mind you, we touched their doorbell. Didn't take up a gardenia bush, their dwarf azalea. How dangerous looking are we elders with our quilted faces, me and my lilac sun hat.
Thank you. Thank you. Joan. Joan is up next.
The title of my program this afternoon is Exit Laughing, and that's what I hope you'll all be doing when I finish.
Joan, we need you to use the microphone. I
Okay,
believe.
is this
Okay.
better?
Yeah.
I'll just move over to the left.
That's
I'm
great.
going to be reading from 2 of my books, which are on Amazon. Tender Chains, which is a volume of poetry of various kinds, and a humorous volume called Haiku for Jutalian Mothers. And I'll explain that when we get to it. So, I'd like to begin. I'm going to read a sampling of many different kinds of poems, humorous poems, parodies, limericks, haiku. So you can see I plan to be very diversified. We're going to begin with a few humorous poems from Tender Chains. The first is called Confession, and I find it's easy when I write humorous poetry to write brief ones. Confession. I admit, I nibbled the cheesecake in the oven, which you probably wanted for dessert. Believe me, it was too tempting a snack before you, the main course. I like to write about the process of writing and the difficulties of forcing yourself to concentrate and be focused. And I find I need different kinds of environments for different poems. So this poem was actually written on the beach, and I call it Denise. On the beach with pen in hand for inspiration from sun and sand, I find it difficult to write as long as she remains in sight. Above her bikini, folds of flesh cry for cover, at least with mesh. A butterfly tattooed across her spine flaps its wings in strange design when she moves from side to side to catch the rays that keep her fried. How grating laughter won't permit me to produce words of wit. The double negatives I hear recall her best friend's last affair. So I layer suntan lotion, escape into the calming ocean, take a nap and make believe I wrote a poem so I can leave. The next one is in the fashion of Dorothy Parker, one of my favorite writers. It's called Enlightened, and it's brief. Love and romance, thrills and passion will visit you for a fashion. But if you think you're like no other, then trust in me, your fairy godmother. The next poem is a bit longer, and it's about the process of trying to play golf, a process I've been involved with for many years. Golf blues. It's just a little game of golf with a very simple goal. You try to hit a little ball into a man-made hole. You get a set of iron clubs. They show you how to grip. Then you have to send the ball on a long-distance trip. A wavy flag signals the hole you have to place the ball, but you can only use the clubs. Your hands won't do it all. It really doesn't seem so hard to grab the club and swing, to send the ball into the air, to hear the perfect ping. And so I address the ball. I figure it's a cinch. I swing the club right under it. It barely moves an inch. The second hole is straight ahead. The sign says a par 3. My ball flies left into the woods. My club flies up a tree. Watch the ball, bend my knees. What else must I do? I swing the club, my ball just sits. I forgot to follow through. Once more I approach the ball. The instructor says, keep trying. I take a swing, the ball just rolls, but my tee goes flying. At the 9th hole, I feel sure I tee up and aim. My club and ball don't meet at all, but I am not to blame. I take a snack and water break. My goal, a hole in one. My ball just rolls along the ground. When will I have fun? After playing 11 holes, I feel like an old fogey. If I could sink it on the green, I'd be happy with a bogey. On the 12th hole, I feel sure I can make an eagle. But after slicing several balls, I'd settle for a beagle. On the grass a second time, I aim for the green. I lose a stroke because my ball is nowhere to be seen. I tell myself, try to relax and ignore the water. I hit a gator with my ball and run away from slaughter. I'm on the fairway once again. I swing away with ease. The ball rolls into a sand pit. I see a snake and freeze. So far, I have lost 4 strokes from water, a gator, and snake. When a squirrel thinks my ball's a nut, I need another break. Although this game frustrates me, I come back for more, with all my golf tips in my head and plans for a low score. I've taken all the pros' advice. It doesn't seem to matter. I hear the women's softball team is looking for a batter. And the last one in this portion, I think about all the names that are current now. Very different from the traditional names of David and Michael, etc., from the 40s and 50s. So this poem is called What's in a Name? When Logan was a last name and Dakota was a state, Madison was a city that no one could debate. When North was a direction and apple was a fruit, summer was a season that no one could dispute. That's when you could distinguish a first name from the last, when name implied a gender, but that was in the past. My neighbor's name is Meadow. Her daughter's name is Lake. Her cousin's name is Carson, and that is no mistake. Yes, these names are common. However, I am prone to like names with tradition. I'm glad my name is Joan. The next section, I will read a few parodies. The next section contains parodies of some of my favorite poems. The first, as you know, a parody is when you poke fun at something through the exact meter, rhyme scheme, etc. of a well-established, well-known poem. So my first parody is of one of my favorite poems, Sea Fever by Joan Magiet. And just to help you a little, I'll recite a few lines of the actual poem to give you a feeling. I must go down to the sea again, to the lonely sea and sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. Notice the use of onomatopoeia and alliteration. So my poem is called Beach Fever. I must go down to the beach again, where my throat gets hot and dry, and all I ask is a cold beer and a song to sip it by, and the sun's smile and the free foam and the warm wind fanning, and some lotion to cover me as I lay tanning. I must go down to the beach again, for the call of a whispering wave is a free call and a calm call that I have come to crave. And all I ask are eager eyes from a handsome fellow rover who'll negotiate a dinner date when the long day's over. The next parody is one of another of my favorite poems and poets. William Wordsworth wrote a beautiful poem called The Daffodils. And this is a parody called My Private Paradise, and I'm going to take you to the casino floor for this one. If you want, I can just recite one or two lines from the actual poem. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vale and hill, and all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. And I'll stop here. So, I drift slowly like perfume, filling the garden late in spring, around the slots that crowd the room, humming my favorite ring-a-ling, doing their saucy song and dance, enticing me to take a chance. I wish for cherries in a row, the clinking sound in trays below. Often when I think in bed, wondering why I'm fighting sleep, my thoughts return to black and red as hours and minutes seem to creep. I'm in my favorite paradise with wheels that spin and cards and dice. And the last parody is of a short poem by Dorothy Parker, one of the ladies and poets who attended the weekly luncheons at the Round Table at the Algonquin in the 40s. She was a satirist. I love her style. She wrote a poem called You Might As Well Live. And my poem is called You Might As Well Starve. Crackers parch you, cheese makes you bloat, muffins starch you, wine strains your throat, veggies bore you, shrimp won't carve, chili will floor you, you might as well starve. The next section going to be how many of you remember your days in the home when COVID was prevalent? These are a series of limericks I wrote during my COVID days. So, we used to be busy as bees at luncheons, tennis, and high teas. Now we stay away, keep all friends at bay, spend time counting the holes in Swiss cheese. Sweet Caroline is now banned. You can't touch anyone's hand. You can't get a kiss, and you'd be remiss if a hug is what you've planned. We're victims of COVID-19. Our lives have become quite routine. There is insistence we keep our distance. We wave to our friends on the screen. In a condo on the East End lives Susie and Tommy, her friend. Afraid of the virus, they took their dog Cyrus and left Long Island. Who would believe our fate? Who could begin to contemplate? We're stuck in our houses with or without spouses. We have to unsave every date. And now that gas prices are low, I find I have nowhere to go. I sit and I talk, I go for a walk, and arrange photos on the bureau. I also, during that time, I thought about other healing ways to spend time and to keep healthy. So these are two about healing. Reiki helps you with ease. Reiki heals you with ease. You don't have to be Japanese. The energy works, and one of the perks, you'll have strong shoulders and knees. Lavender helps you to sleep. It's better than counting sheep. It will suffice to inhale once or twice, then take deep breaths that are rhythmic and deep. Staying at home. Mary's home cooking would please her friends and their families. Her pasta dish was always delish with breadcrumbs, parsley, and cheese. The limericks and haikus help me get rid of the blues. I feel so happy with language that's snappy and images that amuse. And the last limerick in this section. Hooray for inventions like Zoom. It brings faraway friends to the room. We do it with ease, protect boundaries, and wonder when life will resume. And now the last section, is from my book, Haiku for Italian Mothers. I decided that Jewish mothers and Italian mothers are basically the same. So I wrote some haikus. The book is divided into 3 sections. Haikus for Jewish mothers, haikus for Italian mothers, and haiku for Italian mothers. So, first section, haiku for Jewish mothers. A brisk autumn wind, leaves turn brown, orange, gold. Put on a sweater. The kite soars above miles of white sand, blue ocean. Don't muddy your shoes. Don't eat near the walls. Don't track dirt on the carpet. I'm so glad you're home. When they invite you, be sure to bring a house gift. Don't embarrass me. Open the window. Let the neighbors hear us fight. They'll see it's your fault. Here's some good advice. If you just listen to me, you'll do the right thing. Go out and mingle. Talk to the opposite sex. I want grandchildren. Go back to Saks Fifth to find another outfit. Shoes and bag must match. Don't wear the Prada. The Versace is too big. Wear Jimmy Choo shoes. Did you say lacrosse? Your teeth cost us a fortune. Be a chess player. I stay at home each night. I keep the cell phone with me in case you should call. A constant question. Can money buy happiness? At least you have things. You're not going where? Graduate school is a must. You'll find a husband. She is 1 week old. I hope to stop worrying when she gets married. And now to the section on Italian mothers. When Christmas shopping, don't buy a lot of presents. The neighbors watch us. Are we old-fashioned? We must think of the neighbors. They love to gossip. Come for lasagna. I don't have many years left. Are you listening? I have 4 children. They all need food and clothing. Bring home the bacon. I don't hear from you. I went to church to ask God to make you call me. I called your cousins. They invited us for lunch. It's the cheaper meal. Dinner at Aunt Joe's. Wear your Sunday best clothing. I'm bringing the food. You can't sleep over. They don't have an extra bed. Dogs sleep on the floor. Don't date older boys. I can't rest when I worry. I'll wait up for you. Would you believe this? My daughter-in-law brought food. What's wrong with mine? You want pizza? So what if they deliver? You still have 2 feet. If you want a dog, the folks down the street have one. Go over and play. Don't answer me back. I'll cut you off from the world. Where's your bicycle? Children live at home. Kids belong with their parents until they marry. Turn the lights off now. Does Papa work for Con Ed? We're on a budget. Father Luchow says, confession is good for you. Tell me what happened. You love the ballet? You want to be a dancer? Medical school first. This is from the section on Jutalian mothers. You have a new job? It will bring you advancement. Is there a health plan? Joy is in your home. A beautiful hotel room won't make you sleep well. Our house is a church. We pray around the table when we love our food. We are connected to the past generations. Make them proud of you. I have a question. If I wish upon a star, will I anger God? Take a vacation. You can use some rest and sun. Take a warm jacket. Stop talking so much. If God wanted you to speak, you just have one ear. And we're going to finish with, there's no time for church. I'm at home busy cooking. God will understand. Why a Spartan race? Do you think you're still 18? Did you stop to eat? New clothes for Easter. Everything's from Calvin Klein. They fell off the truck. And the final haiku is, you're in Amsterdam? Get on a plane for home right now. I'll stop law school funds. Thank you. I'll clean up this paper mess later.
Well, thank you both. Let's have a round of applause for both of our poets today, both of our readers. And do we have any comments or questions or anything you'd like to say to our presenters today? Anything at all? Yeah.
I think they're both very talented, and it was delightful hearing what they wrote.
Well, thank you. Yes, I agree. A lot of talent in this town and in this room. So thank you both. Other comments? Anyone want? Yes?
Did they know each other before?
No.
Or, okay,
No,
because it
because-
was such an interesting, juxtaposition of poetry. Yeah, that was
Which
very
is
wonderful.
good fortune.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can vouch for it. They just met each other as they walked up into the loft today.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? Anyone else? Yeah, right over here.
I'll just say, though, I'm not really a poetry person, but I love coming and hearing poetry. It just makes me happy. And it's fascinating. We're all going through life together and, experiencing many of the same things in our own ways. It's just fascinating how people's minds take that and put it into such totally different kinds of expression. I'm just really glad I came.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you for that. And if there's nothing else, I will say thank you for coming. And thank you to our poets.